Welcome to Event Experience by Bizzabo, the podcast where we bring the best and brightest event experience leaders together to share stories, tips, and lessons learned from creating some of the world's biggest events. I'm Rachel Moore, your podcast host. Behind every event is the event planner, and this episode provides a deep dive into the person behind the planning for Smartsheet's user conference Engage. Andy Lowe, Senior Corporate Events Manager at Smartsheet, shares the honest challenges he overcame to deliver Engage in 2024 and a taste of what to expect in the 2025 version of the user conference. If resilience, learning, and epic fandom are things you can relate to, you'll love this episode of Event Experience. Well, everyone, we're back with an episode of Event Experience, and today our guest is bringing over 12 years of experience in experiential marketing. We're talking brand activations, trade shows, field marketing, event production, mobile tours, and that's all across multiple industries. So quite some vast experience we're bringing to you today. What is he up to today, you might ask? He is at Smartsheet, and he is the Senior Corporate Events Manager. So I am very pleased to introduce all of you to Andy Lowe. Andy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited for this.
Me too. You sound very busy too, so I'm glad I grabbed some time with you. This is great. First of all, we always like this one too because event planners just are notoriously always having to run around, spend very long days, at the event. So what are your go-to on-the-ground event day shoes?
A number of years ago, I started wearing Nike Pegasus running shoes. And so I've now had, I just actually purchased a new pair. So I think this is my third pair and they each last a few years. So whatever, I think it's the Pegasus 41 right now, but I always go all black because I feel like it just blends in. You can wear something nicer. You can wear something casual. No one needs to notice my shoes. And so I stick with those. The other, I will add a little trick that I got from another colleague a number of years ago is 2 pairs of socks.
Oh,
a little bit extra cushion. So I wear 2 pairs of socks on event days.
That's very smart. Now, I think that's the first time we've heard of the sock advice too. So goodness, that's great. So you are giving all kinds of learnings today. I love this.
Yeah.
And I love asking that question because I bet there's people who's like, I need a shoe that works for me. And so they'll get advice from our guests. So I love that. That's great. Is there anything that you're listening to, watching, or reading these days that you cannot put down?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to my stay curious. I'm a very curious person. And so within the last few months, and I'm trying to remember how I found it, but I came across a podcast called Ologies. It's hosted by Ali Ward. I listen on Spotify. I think you can find it anywhere. The show, each episode focuses on a different area of scientific study. And so there's episodes on, turtles and episodes on wildfire science and the relationships between dogs and humans throughout history. One episode I recently listened to that just fascinated me was there's a college professor who studies reality TV from kind of a sociological perspective. And so the episodes are always different. Some of them are like multi-part, but the topics are way out there. And so it really plays on my curiosity, and it gives me an opportunity to kind of dive into a ton of different topics in, a very limited amount of time and learn a little bit.
That's super cool. I'm going to share that with my daughter because she is Miss Science Woman. And so I think she'd really dig that. So see, I come away with the recommendations too. That's great. How about, is there any particular social post, a piece of media, or maybe even a hot take about events that you found interesting lately?
This ties back to my note about AI, but I've seen it now listed kind of multiple ways. But I saw a quote of, don't think of AI as a vending machine, think of it as a librarian. And what I take away from that is, if I can use AI like a librarian, it can help me navigate the ocean of information that exists out there. It can help me explore topics and help me question my own thinking and biases. Like, I think, we're just at the beginning of AI, and I've seen the Bizzabo list of tech stack and AI tools, and the logos are so small because there's so many out there, and there's you almost need AI to help you navigate the field of AI tools to help understand what can help you the most.
That's going to be the next prompt someone tries. Be like, go ask whatever one they're like, okay, what are
Yeah.
all the AI alternatives out there? It'd be really interesting to see how each one answers and compare. Like, but I'm the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
Use me. That's super. Yeah, I like that. That's a great advice too. It's not just churning stuff out, but it's going to help you find stuff. And I gave the super brief, just very, very much skimmed over you and your background and what you do today. I would really like to toss it back over to you. Can you describe for us a little bit more about your role at Smartsheet? What does your day-to-day entail? What are you doing over there?
Yeah, so it actually caught me this week. I just actually wrapped up the production of another proprietary event in DC that focused on public sector customers. Really, my main remit at Smartsheet is the executive producer of our Engage conference.
Mm.
I also do some work with other third-party conferences or some first-party meetings or events. But really, my main day-to-day is, which also takes up at least 9 months of the year, is leading the planning and execution of our Engage conference, which will be happening this fall.
I'm excited to hear about that because audience, that's what we're talking about today. Sometimes on the podcast, we dig into one specific event because we all know, there are many people in our audience like you, Andy, who are like, look, I may have some other aspects to my job, but there's just one big thing that you are focusing on most of the year to pull off. So I'm excited that we're going to zero in on this with you. I'm going to toss it over to you again. Tell us a little bit more about Engage Conference. What are we talking about here? Explain the conference to us a little bit.
Yeah, so Engage historically has been our user conference. It is 4 days. It's annually hosted in the fall. We've dabbled between September, October, and November. This year we're hosting it in early November in Seattle. We've always hosted it in Seattle. We are in the newer Seattle Convention Center Summit building, so it's been really exciting to now have been in that space for 3 years. We bring over 3,000 customers and partners together for those 4 days. And that's not counting crew or our staff, which is, brings the number to over 4,000 people. But really, our customers and their colleagues come to Engage to really elevate their skills, find that community, and really validate the investment that their company is making in our product. And so I always like to think that I bring it back to our company mission, which is to empower anyone to drive meaningful change. And that's really what we strive to do for our customers at Engage, is to empower them to, when they leave, go back to their company and drive meaningful change.
That sounds amazing. And I think that's a great mission to have for any event where it's like, look, we know you're all users of this product, but there's something that can be changed in your day to day that's going to be meaningful impact for you and make your life better, and who doesn't want that out of a good conference? Plus, I think it's really interesting too. I always love hearing about user conferences because obviously everybody's got a common ground. We all use this software, we use this tool, we use this, have experience with this thing, so they immediately have something out the gate that's like, this is something we have in common. And then you're letting them not only come and experience some of the tech that you're doing, but also experience each other, which is really cool. It's one of my favorite things we talk about on here as user cons. I have a bias.
Yeah, we always find that the folks that come to Engage, they're coming with a challenge or something they need to solve for. And, in its simplest form, we want them to take away an actionable solution for that challenge or to evolve a process to improve their work in their company.
Yeah, which lofty goals again, but
Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to dig into how exactly. We'll talk about goals in just a little bit. Let's focus in on you a little bit though first, because I want to, as we do prepare to dig into the specifics and strategy of the user conference of Engage, let's set the stage a little bit about your experience as the executive producer and where you've been last year versus this year. Can you share with us a little bit about the journey and learnings that you've had with planning the user conference last year, maybe, and how that compares to this year?
Yeah, I think, it honestly even jumps back to 2022. I joined Smartsheet in 2022, and that was the first year I got to really take part in the planning of a conference of this scale. So there was a steep learning curve from everything I'd done in my career up until that point to then take part in the planning of this user conference. So in 2022 and 2023, I was really kind of getting my feet wet, learning what it takes to deliver a conference of that scale. And so in 2024, I took over as executive producer. which really means I went from, being involved in the planning and leading maybe a work stream or two of work to leading a team of workstream leads and the supporting cast of over 50 people across, an 8 to 9 month planning cycle to deliver this event. And so that was the next big jump for me in my responsibility. And again, another steep learning curve. But, I had a unique experience as part of this first time being an executive producer. Had a number of kind of team changes and movements that happened kind of partway through planning.
Yeah.
And it all kind of simultaneously happened. In July, I had a colleague who had been really involved in the core team go on, parental leave. I had our leader of our team depart the company, and then we were onboarding a new team member. And so there was what felt like a vacuum at the time of support and leadership. Really presented a challenge for me to navigate. And, along with every other event that your listeners and anyone in the industry knows about, there's always unique budget parameter challenges and guardrails that you need to stay within. So there was a lot to navigate for me in that. And so at first it felt very overwhelming and alarming to know that I wasn't going to have some key team members involved in the planning. But I think that space was filled by my colleagues, other leaders at the company, to really support me in this endeavor of being the executive producer for the first time, but also to make sure that, we weren't letting things fall through the cracks, that we were developing and evolving the experience to meet our customers' needs, and then ultimately to deliver that experience on site and to have a successful event.
Yeah. Well, I can't think of anyone on our audience that wouldn't relate with a lot of the things you're saying. I mean, who hasn't been there, right? You might have the most intricate plan possible, but you can't, plan against some things where it's like, yeah, life's going to happen with some coworkers, colleagues. Maybe there's these resources, whether it's human or other, that suddenly might shift negatively or positively or whatever, but it's a different experience. And now you're like, okay, yes, yet the goal remains the same. We have to achieve this somehow. I appreciate you sharing that too, because I really think that speaks to the resiliency of event planners particularly. I mean, everybody in whatever field they work in, whatever role they are, needs to exhibit some of that, but it's a different animal when it's for an event planner, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it definitely is. And, I think it's given me a really unique perspective as you kind of to go back to the other part of your question of how I'm looking at this year's planning and this year's event. We have some new team members. I have new experience from last year that I get to take into this year. Since the event last year, we have new leaders within my team. My colleague is back from parental leave. And so it's been great to have our new leaders because they bring a fresh perspective, new ideas. And so I've gotten the opportunity to help them understand the history of the event that I've gotten to experience over the last few years, and also work with them to build out the plan for this year and beyond. And so there's some new to this year's planning, not just team members, but as we evolve our strategy in the conference. And I think I've kind of given myself an additional task, an additional challenge this year. We've restructured our core team in how we plan the event. We historically were one large team that met either biweekly or weekly over the course of the planning cycle. And so you're thinking 50 people, 60 to 90 minutes. That's a pretty expensive meeting from just the number of people hours. And so after a lot of conversation with some of our vendor partners, some internal staff members, we've proposed and are implementing kind of a new structure to our core team, which hopefully will increase collaboration within, the work streams that we've grouped into different categories, but also at the same time, not sacrificing the transparency of information and progress across the team. So there's definitely some learnings we're tweaking and trying to evolve it, even as we're, implementing this structure. And so far I've gotten good feedback, but, it's something that is new this year and a new challenge that we're undertaking on top of, the other challenges that exist just from planning a conference of this scale.
Absolutely. And again, you're sharing some challenges, some things that you needed to think about from resource perspective? Anyone who's in that kind of role, they're like, okay, I have the ability to make this better or keep it the same, which may be better, maybe not better, and making those decisions. And you sometimes you don't know until you do it and then see how it works. But like you said, tenuous but resilient. I wanted to ask you another thing too. Was this with you coming over to Smartsheet? I think you had been agency side before that. Was that a big jump for you to go from agency side to brand side?
Yeah, it was. There seems to be a theme of steep learning curves across my career. But yeah, so I had been with George P. Johnson prior to joining Smartsheet. And so I kind of took this leap in my career from, early on, as you mentioned in introducing me, very like experiential, more B2C, focusing on consumer marketing. And then joining George B. Johnson, that was a big transition from focusing solely on consumers to being more B2B, and focusing also on just more trade shows and conferences than these more experiential, out on the street, consumer brand marketing efforts. And so I had a lot of learnings about event production and conference and trade show marketing, and also in the B2B tech space at GPJ. And so then joining Smartsheet in 2022, that was another steep learning curve where this was the first time I was not just executing a plan, but
Yeah.
was helping to craft that plan and that strategy. And so there was a lot of learnings that I needed to kind of get quick with
Yeah.
when it comes to, okay, how do we build out the justification? How do we really communicate our ROI within the organization? I've had some great teachers at the company to help me get up to speed. And I'm definitely still learning. I'm not an expert yet, but I'm definitely more knowledgeable now in this kind of space than I
Yeah.
was when I first joined Smartsheet.
Well, it sounds like trial by fire a little bit. And when someone comes through that, you're just like, I know all the things about the fire.
Yeah.
And it's looking back to it's like, whew, okay, we made it. I'm sure at the time it was like, oh my God, are we gonna make it? And so I'm glad to see you on the flip side and be like, you made it. You did great.
Yes.
We'll be right back with more event experience after the break. Let's face it, venting won't fix outdated, overpriced event management software that lacks the support and features you need. But Bizibo's Event Experience operating system will. Say goodbye to your frustrating legacy event software and hello to building more events that matter. Visit Bizibo.com, that's Bizzabo.com, to learn more about the Event Experience OS, Click Smart Badge, and more. We're back to ask Andy Lowe about the goals and audience for Smartsheet's Engage user conference. Let's talk about Engage conference. So as with any event, anyone who's doing events, you always want to start out with like, well, what are our goals for this event? You need some stuff to strive for so that you can try to hit the mark. So I'd love to hear, what are your goals around Engage conference this year? Like what are you trying to achieve with that?
Yeah, I think, when we look at Engage, the overarching high level goal of the event is to drive business. But we know that within, I guess underneath that goal of ours, we know that our audience is coming to Engage with their own individual goals based on their wants, challenges, and processes they're working to solve or improve upon. So we almost take a look at our audiences and break them down into the kind of different groups to understand what those goals need to be for us so that ultimately we reach that goal of driving business. And so that's around developing content and experiences on site that are going to be tailored to each of those audiences to help them reach their goals, whether they're a business decision maker or a new user or a power user or an executive.
Yeah. Well, and that brings up, you actually segued beautifully. I couldn't have asked you to do it better to my next question. The target audience for the user conference, obviously it's users of Smartsheet, but yeah, who are we looking at? What kind of demographics folks are we looking at here?
We're also in an interesting time with Engage as we're starting this multi-year strategy evolution of Engage. So this is the first year we're actually targeting prospects to attend.
Oh,
And
nice.
so those are folks that aren't currently customers of Smartsheet. They may have been in the past or they may not have, but we are really wanting to kind of widen the aperture of the audience that we bring to the event. And so that brings in a whole new element to the event of like, okay, what content is going to be relevant to
Mm.
those individuals? What experiences can we tailor to help them gain an understanding, not just of the kind of operational outcomes that they can deliver upon, but the value that they can bring to their organization. So that's a new audience we're targeting this year. We're not losing sight of
Mhm.
our users, which are, the vast majority of attendees of the event. We still need to be developing and delivering content and experiences for them that will help them elevate their skills and solve those challenges that they come to the event with. But we're also focusing on business decision makers and how can we communicate the value to those individuals of Smartsheet. And then the same with executives. Like, the executive may not use Smartsheet, but they may have a view into Smartsheet through a dashboard or be shared information through Smartsheet. So we need to make sure that they're aware of the value of the product as well,
Mm.
even though they may not be diving into specific actions or functions of the product.
Yeah. I it sounds like you mentioned too, like you're building content for each of these different audiences. The prospects one's pretty exciting. And if you think about it from a user conference standpoint, that's a great way to nurture some prospects. Be like, look, you're going to be surrounded by people who are already using this, can tell you all about their experience with it before and after they had it, and that's super smart. And that'll be really interesting to see, like, how that it's almost positive peer pressure,
Yeah.
around everybody. Be like, hey, you should check this out. You're surrounded by it. It's everywhere you look. It's going to be really fascinating to see how that turns out, eh?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge for us because this hasn't been done
Right.
before. And so we're really kind of having to question some of our biases and some of the historical things that we do every year, or, must do's. And so,
Yeah.
because we need to be tailoring the event also to this
Mm.
new audience that we want to, bring into the Smartsheet community. Like, Engage could be their first ever, interaction with other Smartsheet customers,
Yeah.
and we want that one to be a positive one so they can feel like they're a member of the community, even if they're not using Smartsheet yet.
Yep, absolutely. Well, let me ask you then too. So with usually we find that with any event someone is planning, there's a special or unique aspect to the event. And I'd love to offer that to you if you'd like to call anything out, like an innovation, maybe an element of tech or engagement or something like that. But maybe an activation. But what do you have there? What's a kind of special in your back pocket for Engage?
Yeah, we kind of just touched on it, but it's our users, our attendees that have come to the event. They aren't just fans; they are Smartsheet fanatics. The energy they bring to the conference, their love of Smartsheet and what it can do for them in their work. When I first attended Engage in 2022, I was told that we had fanatics, but I didn't. I was like, okay, yeah, we have fans. No, when I experienced it on site the first year, it surprised me, and I was blown away with the energy they bring to the event. I'm not alone in that experience. I've had other new employees, talk to me about Engage and share a similar experience that they had, where they are just absolutely blown away by our attendees and our users at the event. I mentioned the word community, and that's really what we see with our users. Their willingness to share and exchange ideas, solutions, make connections at the event, and build that community.
Yeah.
I'm excited for prospects to see that and get to experience that in person, because you can talk about it, you can, make posts, market about it, but you really have to be there to kind of feel and experience that energy.
Yeah.
And I have a little anecdote to just kind of really solidify this, in that, every year since Engage has happened, and the conference started in 2017, we've given out temporary tattoos of the Smartsheet logo. And every year we run out. Every
Mhm.
year you see them, people put them on their arms, spend some years, people put them on their forehead. But in 2023, a customer took it to the next level, and they, excuse me, while in town in Seattle for the event, they actually got a tattoo of the Smartsheet logo,
Oh my goodness.
because for them, Smartsheet gave them so much in their career that, they are one of those fanatics, and they wanted to memorialize that on themselves. And so that is now kind of like lore within the company when it comes
Wow.
to how great a fan base and user base we have.
A, that's amazing. B, I would imagine that any notions anyone has about, oh, well, let's redo our logo, everyone's like, wait,
Yeah.
put down his
No, not.
tattoo.
Yep.
Oh, and now, so we're recording this right around the time HBO Max just went back to HBO Max. So hopefully nobody tattooed Max on themselves, because
Oh no.
it's like, see, there's more to logo redesign than people might think. So especially for
Yeah.
Smartsheet, that is
Yeah.
amazing. You're right. That is next level fandom. That's pretty cool. Well, let's go internal a little bit. I'd like to give you the opportunity, if you want to share any key individuals or teams that make this event possible. Obviously, you're one of them, and you did allude a little bit to that already about some of the internal resources that maybe you lacked, or were shifting around a little bit last year. Now it's kind of solidified a bit more. Like anyone that, if they hadn't been involved, the event might fail or fall short. Like who would you like to shout out?
Yeah, I think the two people that I would love to give a shout out to for last year and supporting me was our senior vice president of marketing, John. At the time, what didn't have as great of an involvement in the planning as he ended up having last year, but he told me up front that, like, I have faith in you, I trust you that you're going to deliver on this, but know that I'm here. And if you need help, if you have questions, reach out. And that was absolutely the case. Like, I met with him weekly. He was there to answer any questions I had. He went to bat for us with our SLT as we kind of got into the deeper stages of planning when it comes to finances and our execution plan and some of the decisions we were making based on circumstances that resulted in some changes year over year, that, like, hey, we need to implement this. And he said, okay, I trust you. Like, I will go to bat for you with our leadership team. So that was really beneficial to have that faith and support of him. He easily could have decided that he needed to just take a greater role or bring in other leaders to help, kind of fill that gap or fill that space. But, he had faith in me, and he had faith in our team to deliver. And so that was, I think, really beneficial to have. And then a second person would be Sue, who's our logistics lead for the event. She's done every engage. So well before my time, she has all the history of the event. She's the backbone of
Nice.
planning and logistics for the event. And so I think without her being there, so much would have fallen through the cracks. And her ability to crack a joke or bring some lightness to a challenging moment, and also just her expertise and historical knowledge of the event were vital to
Yeah.
getting us through and navigating kind of what felt like a pretty tumultuous period.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Thank you too. It's always great when we kind of be like, look, it's not just, there's no I in team. There's more people that help make this happen. But, obviously anyone we can lean on too. And I like to, because throughout talking to you today, you've really talked about so much learning, and, steep learning curves, which, maybe need a break from that for a little while. It
Yeah.
could be like, just flatten out a little bit. Doesn't have to be so steep, but learning so much. And I wanted to ask you, like, this podcast is titled Event Experience. It was, created, our CMO and co-founder Alone Alroy wanted event planners to learn, and learn from each other and stuff. What do you think that our listeners and viewers could learn from this specific event experience of Engage? What do you think their takeaway would be?
Yeah, I think what immediately comes to me is that it's okay to ask for help and to lean on your colleagues and team members. Even if their remit or what they're focusing on isn't exactly aligned with yours, it is okay to ask for help. It's something I've struggled with at times in my career. Whenever I get the what are your strengths and weaknesses questions in an interview, one of my weaknesses is that I tend to take too much on. I tend to think that I need to be able to handle it, and it's resulted in some really challenging times for me
Yeah.
where I'm getting burnt out. I'm not delivering work to my expectations, and so there's no way I could have taken on everything
Yeah.
last year with my team members not being there. And I had to quiet the voice in my head that says to me, you need to be able to take this on. You need to prove your worth by being able to handle it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would just say it's okay to ask for help and lean on your team.
Really great advice. Yeah, I agree. We all might think we're like, nope, I'm a warrior party of one and nobody can help
Yes.
me. And
Yeah.
unless I do it myself, it's like, oh my gosh, but no, just it's okay. And you're right. I think it's we can find that we could be scared to ask for help, but even if the person's like, well, that's not necessarily my scope, but I want to help you out, and sometimes just that is enough. It's like, thanks for listening. I appreciate that. But easiest question of all next, where can our listeners find and follow you online?
Yeah, I'm mainly on LinkedIn. I'm Andy Lowe on LinkedIn, and I'm the only Andy Lowe at Smartsheet. So if you come across me, that'll be the one.
Andy's advice for event pros to skill up can lead them to vast success if they start with one single characteristic.
Stay curious. I've found in my career that my curiosity has been an invaluable asset. In many ways, it's acted as a compass for me, helping me navigate steps and moments of not just my career, but also my life. Like there's a few examples that stand out to me of, I was living in California and I moved to Texas to take the job at George P. Johnson. And that set me on this current path of event marketing within the tech industry. Another one being that during the kind of quarantine lockdown of COVID, I pursued and completed my master's degree with San Diego State University, and went there because I was curious. I wanted to learn what it takes to be a leader within the industry, and I wanted to better understand how the C-suite views events and how they think about it and how I can better justify those efforts. And even just a current one is AI in events. Last 1 to 2 years, the advancement and adoption of AI has spanned globally, and not just within events, but everywhere. Right now, I'm trying to best understand how I can better leverage that tool to improve my work and the events for Smartsheet customers.
Thanks again to Andy Lowe for joining us on Event Experience, and thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love to hear it. Connect with us on social and subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you're listening. Also, don't forget to share the show with your colleagues and friends. You can find transcripts of each episode and key takeaways on bizzabo.com/podcast. On behalf of the team, thank you. We'll gather again soon for a new episode of Event Experience.